conversation going on in the chat. So let's see what he's going to show us today. So Markus, all the stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Then let's start early. Yeah, welcome to my session about guardians of the Star Schema. It is very demo heavy, so I will just show a few slides to get you like into what is a Star Schema, and then I will run Power BI desktop and guide you through the problems and how you can solve them to make bad data models. So when I introduce myself, I sometimes tell people that I work with models, and maybe they have then different things in mind. Of course, all my clients, all the people I work with, male, female, diverse, are beautiful. It's not about this, but when I talk about models, of course, I talk about data models. And as you can see here in Power BI, I would say this is not a very good data model. There's way too many relationships and filter relationships, and I'm not sure if there's even maybe here is a bidirectional filter there. So this is not a very good data model. This is before I begin my work, right? So why is data modeling important at all, right? Because Power BI is very flexible. You can load any data model into Power BI and Power BI will work. But Power BI is model driven, so it's opposite to other tools which ask you for one wide table, right? One big table, OBT, sometimes people call them OBT. We're doing OBT, right? And they mean one big table. This is very good in Excel, for example. In Excel, you put everything into one table and then use this as as the starting point for your pivot tables. Or if you talk about Power BI paginated reports, the other tool in the Power BI world, the Power BI report builder, there you need to come up with white tables and then use them to build your visuals. But Power BI is different here. We want to have a data model. That means at least two tables, right? If it's just one table, this is not a data model. At least it's not a star schema. And the discussion is not so much about if a star schema is superior over other data modeling approaches. That's not the question, because this one wide table works perfect in Excel, for example, or in Report Builder, or what I think also Tableau, right? They also want to have one wide table, which is okay. But Power BI is a different tool, and they ask you to build a data model, and Power BI is optimized for a star schema. So if you want to have an easy life in Power BI, if you want to have good compression, a fast report, so all the things I assume you want, right? You want the tool, and then you want the tool being fast, being easy to work with. This starts and ends with the data model. So if the data model is a star schema, then you will be able to build fast things. If you ignore the fact that you should have a star schema and have another different type of data model, then you might come into trouble. I will even show you a certain circumstance where you see wrong numbers, right? Nobody wants to see wrong numbers. Yeah, star schema is also easy to understand for the report author because it's well structured, right? You have these folders, these tables where everything for a product is in one table, right? Everything or all the attributes for one customer is in one table. It's not like diverted into different tables. And the whole idea to have a data model and the whole idea to have a tool like Power BI is to make the end user's life easier. That means the people building a report. Because on the other end of this scale, you could like ask people or tell people, you see, you get here's a user, right? A read-only user to our database, right? To SAP or whatever. Here is an online course about SQL. Please be my guest and do your queries and do your analytics. Obviously, this failed, right? So we need to help people to have easier access to the data, and the data model is the key when it comes to Power BI. The bad thing is, if you change the semantic model, the data model, then it most probably will break the report. So if you move columns between tables around, then a report referring a column in a certain table, and then this column is moved to another place, will break. So it's good to spend like 1 minute more, 1 hour more, 1 day more, 1 week more in terms of your project time to think about your data model and come up with a good concept. Because of course you can change it later, but it will break the reports. So this is more expensive to do it later. So I also do sometimes ad hoc data models, right? If you download something, I want to analyze it. I just load it in Power BI and play around, right? But this is the data model I work with, and I know what's the obstacle with it, right? I know it's not perfect, and I know where the limitations are. As soon as I publish the report and the semantic model to give it to other people, and they can then start building reports, I transform it to a star schema, because otherwise as people starting playing around with the report, which is not at the star schema, they might come into obstacles and see problems. Brigade also wrote, please, if there's any questions, any comment, please write either in the, you have to write it there, right? You cannot unmute yourself, but please, database is train proof. I hope so, right? At least the data model when I'm finished with the demo should also be train proof. I like the term. So there's like other schemas, other data models, which are perfectly good for certain use cases, but they're not a star schema and they're not perfect to use in Power BI. And this is what I called the death of the star schema. So Death Star, the reference I promised in one of the chats before. So one single table, OBT is not the star schema. So please stay away from that. I also see sometimes people loading like CSV files or Excel files into Power BI, and then with the assistant, the wizard, it guides you through, then you select all the tables, all the files, all the worksheets, and then every worksheet becomes one Power Query, right? And if you just hit, okay, load to the data model, then every worksheet which became a query, a Power Query, then becomes a table. And this is most probably, so I've never seen a use case where it was a perfect star schema. It's more or less something which is not even any schema. It's not even in normal form. It's just reports, right? Usually if you get access to data via Excel files, it means that they are reports. So using reports to build on your own data model. It was not that way, okay. So fully normalized schema, this is a problem when you have access directly to application databases. So an application database has to be in third normal form, a weird term. If you're not into that, just Google it, and there's a lot of material out there what this is. And this is perfect for an application database, but it's really, really hard to build reports on. So this is also something we need to change into a star schema. Header detail, so if like one order, then you collect like the name of and the address of the customer and like the freight costs in the header table, and then you have a detail table where you see every product ordered within this order, right? This is very common to split it up, for example, in fully normalized schemas, but it's a very bad idea to keep it like that if you load to Power BI. And also Data Vault, just put them there. I'm not an expert to Data Vault, but I can remember that I Googled about Data Vault and then came on the Data Vault page, and it like on the main page it works also with Power BI. And this made me adding this here. Of course, it works with Power BI because Power BI can work with any data model, but you will have a lot of troubles when it comes to performance, when it comes to more than very simple DAX calculations. And also for me, like I learned working with databases and SQL like 35 years ago, and I was trained in thinking in third normal form. This is what they trained us to. And when I first have seen a dimension model, I thought there's something wrong here, right? There's a lot of redundancy. This has to be normalized. No, it has not. So please do what Markus says here. You have to let all go, fear, doubt, disbelief, free your mind, right? It's really important that you really come into what is a data model, what is a star schema, and how you can model it like this. Yeah, in Power BI, and this is like this last slide I will present. There's a lot of other slides in that I will share with that, but after that we will jump into Power BI. So in Power BI, we have the semantic model, right? Previously called data set, and then we have data sources. And the question is, how do I get it there, right? And the only way is through Power Query. There's no other way. You have to Power Query is always in between your data source and your semantic model. So when it comes to transforming the data, Power Query can be a good choice. If you could also add other like calculated tables and calculated columns in DAX, you should not, right? And these tools were invented way before Power Query was a thing. So in Power Pivot for Excel, the only way to add new information to your existing data you're loading from the data source was over calculated columns and calculated tables. They're still there, but you should avoid them as much as possible. But instead, use maybe your data source and change the things in the data source. So if you're the owner of a database, of a relational database, you can write queries, you can write views, you can store views in your relational database, then please do all the transformations there, and then just load the view as it is to Power Query and then load it to semantic model. On the other hand, DAX is very important when it comes to measures, so-called explicit measures. That means you create a new measure to calculations. This is important because there are certain calculations you cannot do in any other way, right? When it comes to semi and non-additive calculations, think about a balance sheet, right? Where you have stock levels, or think about ratios and percentages. These are semi or non-additive calculations, and you can only do them correctly in DAX. You cannot pre-calculate them in Power Query or as a calculated column or in your data source. So what am I? Okay, this is discussing about Kimball and Inman. I will not come into. So let's jump over to my demo machine. And what I'm having here is an empty Power BI file, right? And I'm very thankful that Power BI and Microsoft provides us with a sample data. I'm very thankful because this sample data is really, really bad in terms of if you load it like it is, this is not a very good idea. I'm though afraid of that people might think, as Microsoft provides a sample data file in this shape, that maybe they also think it's a good idea to load this in this shape. It is not, right? So just to show you what's the effect here, I hit load. I always tell everybody, if you load something from a file, never hit load, because most probably you have to transform the data. Transform the data, and then Power Query starts, and you can start transforming the data. Right here, I will load the data just to show you what's the effect of that. Of course, everything is then loaded, and then we get this file and all the columns of this file in my data section here. And when I start over to explain why I say it's not a good idea, just to have a baseline, if I start DAX Studio and use the Vertipack analyzer from DAX Studio to show you how this table looks like, there's two things I want to point out. One is I've loaded the financial table, right? But there's also a date table template, and there's also a local date table. I didn't even ask for it, right? But it's there. And as you can see from the Vertipack analyzer, so on the advanced and the few metrics, we get this information here. This table has 730 rows. Apparently, this is one row per day for 2 years, and it's taking up together 140 kilobytes. Not very big, right? And the financials table is also very big. It has 5 megabytes. It's a really, 700 rows, not very much of information, but it takes a lot of space here because for some reason it built a huge dictionary here, right? So this is the baseline. So the first thing I usually would do is to get rid of these date tables. The date table are dangerous in terms of, let me start this from here. I think I did not pre-open that. Forgot about that. To show you what this auto date time means. So this date table comes from a feature called auto date time. And the feature auto date time fulfills only one very narrow use case. The reason why we have this is because Power BI or Microsoft has this concept of 5 times 5. So they have, when they build something to Power BI, the goal for all the things is to have 5 minutes to onboard you. So you download Power BI, you load data into Power BI, and then 5 seconds to wow, right? And 5 seconds is very short. So in the 5 seconds, when they ask you to build a date table and do other things, this takes way longer than 5 seconds, right? So the idea is to have some features in there which narrows down the wow effect to only 5 seconds. The thing is though that later on, these features will really block you. So what we're having here is that I built here a report or loaded data into intentionally. I have a date table which is empty, a date column which is empty, one which has 2 years, one which empty and very late in the time, right? The biggest number or the latest date we can get in a date table. Then somehow I succeeded to also have the year 100 here. Officially only 1900 dates from 1900 are supported. And if I do the same thing here and start the DAX Studio to show you what this system looks like, it's really very amazing because I not only have one date table template and the other tables, but I have what is this? This is 5 date tables, right? Because I have 5 date columns, and for each of them this is created. And really astounding is then the statistics here, because the biggest table here is one of these local date tables, and you can imagine it's the one column from year 100 to year 9999. Power BI built a date table for that for every day for the course of almost 10,000 years, And this is why this kernel is so high. So this is like I'm taking 270 megabytes of data just for this date table. I don't really need, really, because if usually you can have columns like this is because there's like a valid from, valid until column there. You will never ask for like, show me only things which are valid until a certain year. I've never seen a report like that. Maybe you have a use case for that, but in my 10 plus years with Power BI, I never had to do a report with that, or even more years in data warehousing. So the thing is, we have to turn this off. The thing is, though, that if I take a look here, that this feature helps me to get this very nice hierarchy, right? I get this date 3, and then for date 3, automatically I get this hierarchy with the year, quarter, month, and day. Bad thing is we cannot change that. So if you want to have like the quarter look in a different format, or the day as a date, it's not possible. That's the one thing. And also the levels are fixed, right? On the other hand, if you create measures into time intelligence calculations like this one, so I just want to calculate what's the year-to-date value for my sales amount. Don't even have a measure here, but then I put in for this function, I put in my date. You have to provide a date column, right? And in the terms of this automatically created date hierarchy, there's this very weird notation which is only available for this automatically created date table, is that for the sales date column, there is like this method date. So as soon as I turn this off, right, I do not want to have this. I'm not about what's the matter with me? I want to click the options here. So I jump to the options and settings, options, jumping to my data load, and then turn off the auto date time. As a homework for you, also go to the global section, regional settings, not regional settings, but also data load, and also turn this off once forever, right? So then also for new files it's turned off. I don't do that because I have to demonstrate the effects here. That's the only reason I keep this turned on. So I always have to turn it off for my individual files. As soon as I do this, I get a break in my report, right? Because for the calculation, this does not work anymore. See, it's now asking me for this is not possible, so I have to change this. I have to provide like only the date column instead of that. Then now it's working again. And here we have the same effect for the amount year to date, which is also affected by this weird notation, right? And as soon as I correct this, I see that now the hierarchy is gone. So even that in some occasions the report will not break, but the look and feel of the report will change. It's also a bad thing. So turn this off at the beginning, and instead, that's what I will now do with my financials example, create your own date table. And this is very easy. I mean, you can create one via modeling, and here we go to create a table. You can use Excel, right? You can have you do it in Power Query. I prefer to do it in DAX because it's really easy to write in DAX. And one thing would be like to have a calendar auto, which is not really a good idea because again, it will create a really huge date table to shorten time. I will jump directly to the calendar function here. And then I can provide like having like from the year 2013, 1st of January, that's where the financial data starts, up to 2014. And then I'm going to December, right? 31st. And if I create this, I have my date table here. This is what I will need, right? Furthermore, I can then also make this more flexible, right? I can ask for, please use the year of my minimum of my date from my financials column, right? Because otherwise I would have to change this every year, like in January or February, and would need to change the things. We can have this very flexible by asking, please, this is my date column. This is the one which I will put the hierarchy on, which I connect to my date table. Okay. And then we can also add columns here. So we can have just one script which contains then everything we need by IntelliSense really is not very helpful here, always in the way. And then we have, for example, I add the year. Come on. I add the year column as the year of my, can't even see something, right? Year from my date column. And then you would do the month number and so on, right? Month number, which would be the month of the date, And then maybe we have a month name. And there we do the format. And I can ask for, please format my date as the month with 3 letters, for example. Then we get as January, or like with 4 means like write it out, January. And you can even, like, if you need a localized version, you can also provide German language, the E for German, Deutsch, and then I'm Austrian, so I want the Austrian notation for that. So I get Jena here. So very easy to build things here. And you should do that, right? Don't depend on this column. If I do so, make sure that I connect those two tables, right? So the date table and the date column, this should be connected and many to one relationship, single relationship, perfect active relationship. If I'm now jumping over to my DAX Studio again, we have this baseline, start a new connection to my untitled, and look, then the date table should be gone. It is not, because I just turned it off in the example, right? In the other example, but not here. Not about. I'm still sleepy. Option settings. So just did this so you can follow along a second time, right? Under the current file data load and for the background color, but for the date time intelligence, I turn this off, right? Jump in here. And then this date table is gone. The size of the model is also much smaller now, right? Can remember it was like 5 megabytes for the financials. Now it's like only 192. So we're saving space. That's one of the reasons. The other thing I would change is this is just one big table, right? We need to split this into several tables. And the idea is to split it into a fact table and at least one dimension table, right? You have a slide here. So the dimension table more or less is a filter, right? If you want to filter group by things, then you should put this attribute, this column, into a filter table. And this is what we'll do, or I will do here and show you in with Power Query, right? In Home, and then we have Power Query somewhere here. Power Query editor. In Power Query, I would make sure that the names are fine, that the data types are right. So also think about decimal number might be a problem because there's like, it's only precise to a certain number of numbers. The fixed decimal number would work better if you can have numbers up to, or your numbers can have up to 4 decimal places. Then the fixed decimal place number would be better. I will keep it like that. So what I usually do is then I disable the load for the original table and then derive my filter and my fact table from that. So filter table would be the dimension table. I reference it here and then ask for, I want to keep the segment, the country, the product, the discount band, and the manufacturing price. I'm very fast here because I already know those columns. I did my due diligence to find out this is like the filter things, and I know that the manufacturing price is there's only one price available per product. So I just shorten things up. There would be more time I would spend with the data, knowing the data, asking questions to my end users, asking questions to the owners of the data. So I'm really sure that I fully understand what is it about and what are the relations inside the data. And then I would only keep these columns, right? Remove all the other columns. And then I want to give like a call this filter, right? And then I do another reference to my original table, and then I will call it KPI or fact table or measures. I know measures is really dangerous, right? As we learned, underscore measures still works in my data models, but if your table is called blank measures, make sure to rename it before you update to the February version of Power BI. There was some problems here. And here in this KPI, I want to get rid of these columns, right? Because they are in the filter table, but how can I refer back to my filter table? And here comes the way that I go back to the filter table and introduce a new column, add a column, an index column, which can start from 0 or 1, doesn't really matter. And I will rename this. And before I do this, I made one big mistake. Before I add this column, I want to make sure that I only have distinct combinations, right? Remove duplicates. So instead of 700 rows, I now end up with here is 372 distinct combinations of segment, country, product, and discount band. Then I add an index and I rename this index column as my filter ID. So usually I would use an underscore for all the columns which are just internally to my data model. Columns I are supposed to hide from my end users. And so they are always on the top, right? Because they're beginning with underscore, I can easily find them. And as I hide them, it's not really important how they are named. There's no need for user-friendly names for that. And in my KPI table or Power Query here, I can go to home and then merge the queries. So merging means that I add columns from another query, going to my filter table, so KPI, looking up the filter table in a left outer behavior, and then have a segment here and the segment here and the country here. So with control click, I can have several columns marked here. So I can refer to the other table and then add the filter table to my KPI table. So okay, then I get this table here, and under this expand option, I can get rid of everything but the filter ID. And I do not want to use the original column name as a prefix. That means the column should just be named underscore filter ID and not filter dot underscore filter ID. So that's why I get rid of this checkbox. And now I have the filter ID as well in my KPI, so I can get rid of the filters, right? Segment, country, product, discount band, and manufacturing price. And while I'm at, I can also remove the month name, month number, month name, and the year from this column, from this table, because I already have these columns in my date table. So this time I remove these columns, and then I close and apply, and add the things to Power BI. Again, jumping and checking in my DAX Studio. So connecting here to my Untitled. Now I have the filter table and the KPI table. The financial table is gone. And if I view the metrics, we see that the model is even smaller now. So it's in total, it's now, what do we have here? Summary. It's now 174 bytes, by previously it was 223. I know this is really small models, so this is not a big size. So size is not really the reason why we would do that, but there's also other reasons. And for that, I will jump over to my other demo, the auto exist thing. So there is an optimization in Power BI called auto exist. So the sole purpose of this is to have Victor, was ist denn? Brauchst du was von mir? Hä? Okay, passt, ja. Dann kann ich nichts machen, ich muss trotzdem im Development. Danke. So, my son had a question. So the auto exist optimization. Yeah, the auto exist optimization is the following. So I have this example in case you're not familiar with DAX. So there's a DAX expression, DAX measure I created, which asks for count the rows of my sales table. It's a very simple sales table here. And the data model at all is just more or less two tables. I have the sales table, I have the date table. That's what I'm looking at currently. That's the important part here. And then I do these calculations, right? And as my sales table only has 4 rows, I can see 4 is the right example, right? So it's the right number, which you can see here. Then I made a variation of that. So I asked for I created another measure here. Use the calculate function to change the filter, to change the behavior of the measure. So I'm referring the sales measure from up there, count rows, and then remove filters from the date column of the date table. Currently, there's no filter on the date column of the date table. That's why we see 4 here as number as well. As soon as I click, for example, on the product, select the product, if I would be able to select the product, right? This is filtering now to 100. 100 is only sold once, right? Only one of the 4 rows has product ID 100, and this filter, so it's only 1 row, right? And also if I remove the date filter, still there's no date filter on the date table, it's still starting 1. So this is perfectly working, right? As soon as I change the filter to my date table, we see differences, right? Because now I'm filtering to the second of the month. Second of the month is only 1 single row here. This is why we see number 1 up there. Here we see number 4 because this filter is ignored. We ask for please remove the filter before you calculate the sales. So we see the number 4. Everything nice and crisp, right? The thing starts now if I combine filters. So if I have one filter on 100, another filter on 110, and then ask for the second of the month. So if I ask for 100 and 110, This is like these 3 rows, 100, 110, right? The fourth one is 120, which is not part of my filter. So that's why I see only 3 rows here, but for the number up there, I'm also taking into account the 2nd of September, 2nd of the month, which also only 1 row. So in the end, both filters applied, only 1 row survives, this 1 row for the 2nd of the month. If I ignore the filter on the date table, only 100, 110 comes into account, which is 3 rows, right? Everything perfect. I did the same thing now with a variation. So we get in the gray area, as you can see. I literally grade this because this is a gray area. There's a problem in here. As you can see, I did a very similar thing, right? I calculate something, remove the filters from the sales table on the date column, but it's not showing 2. It is the same table, right? So what I'm simulating here is, here I have my spec table and my filter table as separated tables. Here I simulate the case, I don't have any filter tables. So if you have one big table, you only have one table. So you can only put filters on this one table. You can also remove filters from this one table, right? And this is happening here. Unfortunately, we see the wrong numbers. So if you have a data model with just one big table, there's a high probability that you come into troubles when calculations are done. Sometimes people tell me, we don't do any remove filters. Nobody of my team will prepare things like that. But then my answer is, if you provide a semantic model and people build their own reports on your semantic model, you don't know what kind of measures they build. They can copy and paste things from the internet, even if they don't know really what they do. But in the end, they will find out there's something wrong. And they will not complain about the Power BI is wrong, but they will complain about that your data model is wrong somehow. And that's the case here. So what's happening? Why do we see number of 2 here? This is because of this auto-exist optimization. The auto-exist optimization does the following and looks on the filters, right? 110 and 100. So 3 rows, right? Then it applies the filter on the 2nd of the month, which is just this row, and then finds out, hey, can you see, like on the 2nd of the month, there's only productivity 110 available. So I auto-exist, I remove, for like maintaining the filters, DAX removes this filter on the product 100 because it's not necessary. On the 2nd of the month, only product 110 was sold. So it doesn't really make sense to keep also the filter, this information about the filter 100. So it slims down the filter context to maintain and use when calculations are done. That's why it's okay, right? But if you later come here, and this is what I do with my DAX measure, later I remove the filters on the date. So the filter on the date is removed, but the filter on the product ID, I didn't talk about the filter on the product ID, right? So the filter on the product ID is not reconstructed. It's still only on product 110. The filter for 100 is gone due to this auto-exist. So if I look then, remove the state table filter and only look at the filters on 110, we can see this is 2 rows, and this is why we see the 2 rows here. So I can explain what's happening. You hopefully can understand what's happening, and hopefully you can understand the motivation. This is an optimization, but this can really bite you. And this is always the case if there is filters on several columns of the same table. So it's not only happening in the one big table scenario, but what I also did here, as you can see, I have 2 gray areas, right? I simulated what I just built together with you in the financial tables, where I have the sales table, and then I have a filter table, and both the date filter and the product filter is in this filter table. So now I've separated again sales and my filter table, but in the filter table, I have 2 things in common there. The date and the product ID are from the same table and with the same effect. So this effect happens if we put together attributes which have not a hierarchical combination, which should not be like viewed as a composite thing, but as separated things. If it's separated columns, like the idea or the information is separated, totally independent of each other, then you should put them in 2 different tables and not in one table together. So the easy solution, that's what I would do, is to now split the filter table into several tables. That's what I will show you in a second. The other thing is what you can also do since a couple of months, was it in November, September-ish, somewhere in there, Jeffrey Wang announced in a blog post that there's a new option available in your semantic model. And if you don't know who Jeffrey Wang is Mr. DAX, who he invented DAX. He's the chief engineer for all the engineers writing and working with DAX and implementing everything. So in the data model, I can go to the model and then to the semantic model and then see properties in there. And then you see this value filter behavior. Automatic means auto exist, exactly what I just demonstrated. If you change it to coalesced, it will be the same. Automatic is coalesced. So it's looking like it filters as there would be one thing. And if I remove, so I can like remove filters in there without harming the output of the calculation. If I ask them to look at them independently, this is what I can set here, and jump back to my report, then my problem is gone, right? So now every filter on every column, even from the same table, is looked at independently. So this auto exist feature does not kick in. As this is still new, I'm still evaluating where are the side effects. I expect that in some models there might be a performance penalty because auto exist is an optimization in terms of performance. So not so many filters has to be maintained by the Vertex engine. But so I'm still on my learning path about how good or bad it is to change it to independent, or wouldn't it just be better to build your proper star schema, right? So that's what we will change now. So instead of having in my untitled, there's a mistake in the date table, of course, because I renamed the table to KPI. Let's fix this as well. So, and the reason why I did not demonstrate this auto-exist problem with this example is that the auto-exist problem is really, really hard to reconstruct. It's only happening if there's like not all combinations are available, right? So in the financials example, every segment was sold in combination with every country, was sold in combination with every discount band, so there's no gaps, right? That's why you cannot reconstruct the problem with financials. So it's really hard that I could come up with an example to explain it, right? But this also means that if you are negatively affected by this auto-exist, it's really, really hard to spot the reason for that. Maybe never, nobody will spot the problem in first place, which is really bad, right? But because then we would report on wrong numbers. So there's still something is incorrect. Why? Because this is a reserved keyword, so I should put this under single quotes. Not filter, but KPI. So that's working. So instead of having everything in one filter table, by the way, as people mentioned Inmode and Kimball will call this a chunk dimension, a dimension where you put all filters, all dimensional attributes into, which has first a small cardinality, so there's not many different values available, and they don't have many attributes, right? In my case, the segment only has one attribute, the segment name, and the cardinality of 5. Products, I think we had 6, and so on. So this is very small in cardinalities. So from a data warehouse perspective, from what Kimball teaches, it might be okay or good to put this in one table. From what we see from Power BI, maybe not as good as an idea if you remove filters or have to remove filters. And you never know if you will remove filters for certain calculations in the future. That's the thing, right? To say, I will not be hit of this problem because I never use remove filters. You don't know what's happening next week, in a month or so. So instead of having this filter table, we have to split this up, right? So maybe I just disable the load here to keep it if you want to take a look later on, and then reference this again. And now I create my segment table. Maybe the easiest way is to just copy and paste the name here, remove everything else, move other columns, and then ask again for removing the duplicates, and then add the column having this filter column added, right? And then I call it segment ID. Then I reference this again. Now it's the country. Remove everything else. Looking for the remove the duplicates, and then the index column called _ customer ID, a country ID. So Then once more, reference the product. I found out that the product and the manufacturing price, they have like have the same cardinality, and like there's one, every product has one manufacturing price. So it might be a good idea or not. In this case, I assume it's a good idea to keep them in just one table. I remove the duplicates again. Have my product name here, add column called product ID, and rename this to product. And last but not least, I add my reference, my discount band, remove all the other columns, add an index, discount band ID, and maybe I call it without a blank, as this is a technical name. And now I need to change my KPI, right? So instead of expand the filters, I remove this. I need to merge. I need to merge and expand several times now. So I jump to my home and merge the queries. Insert the segment to the segment. Then expand segment ID. Yeah, inserting is okay. That's because I removed the columns. I keep this step here. But it will always ask me if I want to insert something. So, merge another query. And this would be the country then. And only keep the country ID. Yes. Merge the product. Only keep the product ID. And last but not least, merge last time with the discount band to the discount band table and keep the discount band ID. Again, I remove all the other columns, so I only keep these IDs. Let's see how this will work out. I have now my back table, which is the KPI table, which is here. For some reason, the filter from the date table was removed for some reason. So let's move it over there again, and also move the date and connect the date and the date column. This was after I renamed it from financials to filters. Okay, then another try in DAX Studio. Untitled, and view the metrics. Now we see that the model grew in size, unfortunately. The thing is that it now has like several filter, that instead of one filter ID, it now has a segment ID, a discount band ID, and so on. And this adds again for the data we have to store there, but we are safe about the auto exist. So there's like a trade-off. Either have one chunk dimension and then turn the setting in the model to independent, so the auto exist does not kick in, or split the tables up. So it's up to you. There's only those two scenarios. Everything else will not work. How are we doing about questions? Do we have? Let me. Our memories. Okay, there's a lot of things going up. I didn't fulfill the comments. Yeah, Darth Vader does not make.
There's one question from Donald Markus on underscores in column IDs.
Underscores,
ID
yeah.
columns.
Yeah. Okay. Let me jump to the question. Yeah, underscores in the ID columns to sort to the top. Yeah, that's basically that's the idea, right? Because if I have this certain character, that means that in my where's my cursor? In my view, in the data view, it's always alphabetically ordered, right? So I get my country ID on top of that, and I can just find it really easy, right? And then I hide it. I do the same for the discount band and so on and so forth. So I don't have to go through all the columns and look where are my IDs, right? Because ID is at the very end, it's not sorted after that. So this is why I prefer having these underscores here. What's more important is that you have those really. So it's better in the model view, right? In the model view, I can also click on several columns simultaneously. What's very important is, if you ask me, is to name the columns in the fact table, so the foreign key, and in the dimensional table, the primary key, the same. So then Power Pivot automatically creates those relationships for you. If it does not create a relationship, then I would look out for if there's a problem like with the cardinality or other things or data types. So this would be a good sign that there's like maybe a data quality problem, right? Does this answer your question about the underscores? Let me know. Then there's another question. Auto exist. No, not safe with star schema. If you pre-filter some values in the filter pane on values from the same column in a dimension, you can hit the all calculations auto exist issue. That was my case in a big enterprise star schema model. Yeah, but all, Henrik, the all and the remove filters, these are the same calculations, right? How did you come into the problem? Because if you do it in the filter pane or do it in a slicer, this should not make any differences. Did it? So maybe you cannot unmute yourself, right? But maybe you can write a more specific question. If you pre-filter values in the filter pane on values from the same column in dimension, you can hit the auto calculation at exist issue as well. Okay, not if it's a slicer. Yeah, but this is what I demonstrated. So I'm not sure what I miss here. Until Henry comes up with a more detailed explanation. What's also important is if you create a date table, there's also several things you should do. For example, if you have the month here, and then the month is automatically sorted by alphabetically, right? It starts with April, goes to September, which is really weird, right? Because clearly would start in January and going to December. So right now I have this German version of this of the month names here, so you can also learn a little bit of German language here in this talk. So this is a free gift to you. And so what you need is that you need also a column with the month number, and then you can click on the month and ask for, please don't, if somebody asks for the month as sorted, then order it sorted by the month number, right? So this is one of the things you should do, at least with your date table. This can also have been a common question asked for dimension tables. So for example, products should be ordered also in a specific way, which is not alphabetically. This is one of the things. The other thing with the date table is this problem which can hit you when the date key, so when when the foreign key to the date table is not of data type date, but is an integer. Sometimes in data warehouses, is a common practice, a best practice that you have like an integer which consists of the year, the month, and the day, but as an integer. So we can read, as a human, we can read this date, right? But indeed, it's an integer. So under these circumstances, you should make sure that you, mark the table as a date table. If you do not, then the time intelligence calculations might fail. Yeah, of course, the Jeffrey Wang solution will do the trick, but I'm currently not sure if this is something I can just recommend and tell people. It's not important that you have you can use your one big table, right? And then this setting will change everything to the better. There might be some side effects. I'm still haven't found out about that. Still playing around with this setting to find out about that. So for the mark as a date table is important if you do, for example, time intelligence calculation. So I ask for, please calculate the sales amount with, and then I want to have the year-to-date value with this automatic or built-in time intelligence function. So what it does is it now shows in this new column, it shows me the value plus the new value, right? The previous user date plus the new value is the same value because there's only one value available in June, in this case, 48,000. If they do this very same with a combination of date table and fact table, which is over a date key. So I've now this date key, right? This integer, which reads like a date, but it is indeed an integer, not a date, not of date time, not of data type, date or date time. And if I then build something like this very same calculation, this time intelligence function, for example, does not work. And the cure here is to go to this table, the date table, just go under the model, now here it is, under the new table tools, mark as date table, and then you turn this on and tell it, usually you only have one date column in this date table, so it's really easy to find the date column, and then just hit save, right? Then this will also work. On the other hand, if you do this in cases where the data type is already a date, right? So you don't do any harm, right? Even if it's not necessary, if you click here and also tell it what's the date column, nothing will happen. So the short story here is always mark your date tables as date tables. Don't forget it. Put this on this list of things you have to do if you create a new data model or a date table. Okay. Any other questions before I jump back to my slide deck and ask about or talk about the other direction of things? This is here, and then I have my. So what we now talked about is if you have too few tables, right? You have one big table and then you need to split it up. This is usually the case if you connect to Excel CSV files. Usually they're not really tables. It's more a report-like thing, and then everything is in this report, right? We'll move this a bit down. So if you connect to application databases, they are usually in third normal form or close to third normal form. They're normalized, and this means there's too many tables in terms of to make it a star schema. So maybe you have this product table, and some attributes are in the product category and others are in the product subcategory table. So avoid this. Again, this is not a star schema, and you should avoid this. And again, this is really easy to build. So all the data model, or most of the data modeling approaches, is not really hard to do because you can do it in DAX, you can do it in Power Query, you can do it in SQL, you can do it in your data source, whatever tool you're using. It's not really important what kind of tool you're using. It's more about what I see is the motivation that you are aware of, that it's better to have a star schema than any other modeling approach because Power BI will work better. So in the home button, we can jump to Power Query again. And to denormalize something is like very similar what we just did with our, now I have this data source problem here. I have to pick the right names. For some reason, the paths change all the time. So I go here and I have the date table, dim date, here it is. And then I repeat this with the product table. Jump to the last one. Product table, sorry. That I have to do this. Then there's the dim product. Category. For some reason, the paths on my virtual machine or my local machine are different for OneDrive. And this always screws up my demos. And no matter in which way I save it, the next time I open it up on the other machine, and then I'm stuck again with this problem. So, then, but it's not territory. And the result sales. Okay, so what we need to do is that we want to denormalize the dimensions all the time, right? You do not want to have normalized dimensions. You want to have normalized fact tables. So in the fact table, no redundancy should be there. But in the dimension tables, filter tables, product, category, subcategory, this should be denormalized. And the trick is the same as we just made the KPI table. Look up the filter ID or the segment ID. We just do a merge query. So the merge query, I can merge my product table with my product subcategory table. And then look, again, left outer is a good idea here because we do not want to lose any products. And indeed, in this example, there is product subcategory key sometimes empty. So if we do an inner join, this would remove those products. This might be useful in some cases. Here it is not. I do not want to have removed anything. So I used a subcategory and here. As the first rows are empty, the data type is now not fitting. So I have to jump back to my product table and tell it this is not a string, but this is a whole number. And then try again. Replace current, then merge the queries. Again, the product subcategory with my product subcategory table, the product subcategory key. Okay. And then I pick from this product subcategory, I pick only the English product subcategory name and the product category key without the prefix again. And now I have the product category key also here, so I can again merge the queries, pick my newly created product category key and connect it with the product category, and then also left outer join with the product. We have here the product category key. Again, only accept or add the English product category name. Everything else I don't need. And then we can remove the category key, but I can also remove the subcategory key from here, right? We don't need these columns anymore. Remove other columns. And then I can turn off the load for these tables, because now I have everything in one table. Disable the load here. And this I can convert a too normalized, so to speak, too normalized schema also in the start schema by denormalizing, by using merge. In SQL, it would just be joins, right? You're joining these tables and return everything in the view or the query which you use to query the product information. As soon as this is finished, the product category and subcategory table will disappear. And of course, it will break my report because they're referring to elements which are not anymore in this table, but the other table. That's why it's important to build this as good as possible from scratch. Yeah, parameter might help. Yes, I have to introduce this sooner or later in my in my example here. And then there was an answer from Henrik. My point is that you can run internal text, even if a star schema, be aware. So just if you explained it can occur in certain combinations where you filter on to count the same table from the same dimension. Yeah, that's what I think. So I would be eager to learn about your example where you have an auto-exist problem with filters on columns in different tables. Maybe referring, of course, it can also happen if I have like my product table. So for some reason, there's all the other columns is gone because I made a mistake here, right? I think I removed the other columns, right? What did I do here? The product table. Yeah, I clicked the wrong thing, right? I do not want to select columns, but remove columns. That's what I think. I wanted to do remove columns. Can I do this? Yes. Of course, it also can happen if you have your product table and then have filters on different columns of the product table and remove things again. Usually, this is less of a problem because this is a hierarchical information, right? If I have my filters on the product category, the subcategory, and the product name, and then remove any of these, this is not a problem because inside one product subcategory, there's a certain amount of products, right? So if I remove the, if I keep the filter on the product, but remove the filter on the product subcategory, or the other way around, it doesn't be as much as a problem as it is. But technically, you're right. Technically, you're right. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe I have to come up with an example also for that. Do you use hierarchies much, say for product category, subcategory? Yes, I do, just to help the users, right? Because again, yeah, can remember from the first slide, the goal is to help the end users. You can always like build calculations or matrices with like the separated columns, right? You have this product name, and then you have this product subcategory name, and the English product category name, so something like this, right? The other way around. That's what I wanted to do. But then you have like drag and drop 3 times, and you can ease this by using the hierarchy feature. So you come to the product table and then select the product category, for example, English product category name. Where is it? Here it is. And then we create a hierarchy. And then I add also the English product subcategory and the English product name. Memo to me, always hit the apply level changes. Usually I create hierarchies 2 times because I jump over, try things, and then it's not saved. You have to apply the level changes here. And then you have this hierarchy, which I usually would ring like products or something like this, right? Or categories or whatever, right? And this is helping the end users because now they can build the same visualizations by just getting the product thing here. So only once drag and drop or one click. But other than that, there's no special feature attached to that. In multidimensional databases, so in analysis services, multidimensional, the cubes, the thing before Tabular, before WordyPack, it was really important to do that because performance was also dependent on knowing about these hierarchies because it builds up these aggregations and can only build up aggregations if it knows about hierarchies. So it can only build useful things here. So there's not how would you handle potential snowflake candidates? User must see manufacturer name. This is a product table. Would you also have a manufacturer dimension for reporting? You mentioned just from the manufacturer team to the product. So I would either move everything to the product table or keep the manufacturer separated if this helps the end user. I mean, the penalty between manufacturing and the manufacturer table and the product table is the performance penalty depends on how big the tables are, right? If it's usually dimension tables, in this case, if you have millions or trillions of products and millions of manufacturers, maybe it's better to have this all in one table. But it's like in the hundreds of thousands or whatever, it might not make any big difference. If it doesn't really make big difference performance-wise, then just ask your end users, right? They are the boss. That's why I built these data models. I built it for the users who build reports. And if it helps them to find things to create reports faster, then split it up and move it together in one table if it whatever helps them, right? This is my easy answer here. So it depends on the end user. And Henrik is also writing that her first comment was out of the horror reminder because it was rare to run. Yeah. But when I do, boy, it's a pain. Yes. Yeah. I hear you. I was on the digit, but I feel the pain. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a quick solution. So if there's like, if you discover the danger, then this would be like solve the issue immediately for sure. But if you build or think about the data model, yeah, I'm not fully convinced. I mean, Jeffrey Rang put out a blog post. He's not writing about any negative effects, but I'm just wondering, right? Why would they put in this auto exist and firsthand if you can just turn it off again and everything will be as fast as previously? So I'm not sure if they introduce another way or have now a quicker way maintaining the filters. And I think I'm running out of time, right? At the end of my 60 minutes or like 62 minutes because we started earlier. Could maybe use folders to group inside the dimension. Yeah, this is all a good idea, right? To have like a generic product table and then you have a folder with the product attributes and another folder with the manufacturing attributes. Sure, yeah, definitely. So putting things in the folder, people who are not knowing about that, so we can have like the large photo. I can just come here and I will talk until Prakati or Gethin turns me off. So we can have like here a picture
Markus.
folder. And then products will be the large photo, but also in the picture folder. Right, and you can have subfolders, right? You can have like this should be in the picture logo folder. That's possible. Then you have the subfolders. And not that I recommend it, but it's possible. You can also have a logo on the main thing. So the large photo now appears in the logo and picture logo if you want to do so. So we also talked about folders. Yeah. Bagati?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, cool. Let me just, yeah, I think we have the next speaker already here. So let me just, and I don't think we have got any more questions because you have been already looking at the chat and keeping track of the questions and conversations going on, I guess. So thank you so much. And Markus, that was a great session. I mean,
Thank you very
always
much.
good to hear from you around data modeling and star schemas. So thank you so much for speaking for us. And everyone,
Gati.
please go and give the feedback. That
Yes.
is really important, not only just for Markus, but also for us as organizers. So don't forget to do that. It's really important. And I'll paste the chat again, a link in the chat again for the feedback. It's also pinned in the chat in case you guys can pick it up from there. Thank you so much, Markus. And everyone, please stay tuned because we have got another speaker for the next session.